everyone. I'm Paula Cellar, and thank you for inviting me to come and share about my work. And I'm glad to be here today with all of you, and also thank you for waiting for me. You know, taxi rides are, sometimes more of an excursion than what we think we're paying for. No, but glad to be here. What I thought I would do initially is spend a little bit of time talking about my background and my work, and if I hear any snoring, then we'll quickly change to something more interesting. I thought we would talk about my work and my background a little bit for you, and so that you can have a sense of what it is I enjoy doing. And then for the second half of our time, I thought that I would talk a little bit to specifically what massage therapists have benefited from or enjoy from my work. I know earlier in the week Paulette and I spoke about the possibility of the second half of our work talking about therapeutic uses of imagery for massage therapists, and then we thought, well, maybe we can expand that a little bit so that people can get a sense of how they might enjoy some of the services that are available. So if that sounds all right to everyone, and then between those transitions we'll have opportunity for comments or questions. And as you might know, my inner perception is pretty astute. My eyesight is unique, and so if someone wants to address me, please say hello Paula or yo, or most anything is fine, even if we're on camera. And as I'm speaking, I brought my brochures, so if anyone would like for themselves or for a personal referral, please feel free to take. And then these are also business cards. I imagine some of you are working on those yourselves. Are most of you second trimester students? Do we have first? First and third, okay. So each of you will kind of come at what I share with your own unique perspective, which is great. And I always do share from that, and I recommend that each person just take inside whatever feels most useful to you, and whatever doesn't, just kind of let that fall away or put it on the back shelf. And I know the older I get, the back shelf in my heart and mind is getting bigger and bigger. So my initial background was in counseling and teaching social work administration. So my traditional background started in that venue many years ago, probably more than we'd like to recount. And so my undergraduate degree was in psychology and special education from Creighton, and then I pursued a master's degree in special education. At the time I was working at the then Meyer Children's Rehabilitation Institute with the medical center, and I really enjoyed working with the young children and their families, and I was highly motivated to help children and their families have a better quality of life than I experienced as a young child. And another transition point came in my life in my late 20s, so those of you who are experiencing that time window, you can probably relate to your own version of what that is. And all my life I had been a highly sensitive person, and the good side of that was people would smile and say, well, how did you know that? How did you figure that out? And the downside was, I can't keep anything from you. Or, I feel, I have no privacy. And in youth, the intuition for me anyway was a survival mechanism. It was self-protection. And then in my late 20s, my life began to get very interesting, and some of you can probably relate to this. I had a series of sleep dreams that came true, and waking visions where you see something in your mind's eye and it later unfolds as you've seen it. And so that was a real transition point for myself, because I had an intellectual interest in intuition and in studying inner knowing and how does that go about and how does that work for people. I really didn't expect a wake-up call like that. And so at that point I said, I really think I owe it to myself to explore this part of my nature, and I'm going to seek out the most grounded, warm-hearted people that I can find and see what they teach me. And as I grow older, I'll make a decision about if this is something I want to work with, right? Well, you can probably guess which decision I made. So around 1980, I had been laid off a job as a rehabilitation counselor, and my friends were very supportive of what I was attempting to do in my life, and pretty soon they began to make referrals. And even when I would say, I'm not really certain that I can, share my intuition with people in a meaningful way, people still kept coming to work with me. So that was when the rest of my education began, shall we say. And I was blessed. I found very grounded teachers who were also special education teachers and bus drivers, and they didn't have a turban or a jeweled forehead. You know, they were very kind, intelligent, articulate people who were teaching me, mentoring me. And so I went to the School of Metaphysics here while I was gainfully employed in other areas, and then later I chose to go to the Berkeley Psychic Institute in California. Both of those programs are still in existence. We don't have a program here in Omaha. I think the closest program is in Wisconsin now as far as the School of Metaphysics. And then in the early 80s also, about 1983, I really decided that the entrepreneurial spirit in me was alive and well, which I'm sure all of you can relate to at this point. And so I began my business, which I call Heartworks. And so now we kind of get up to speed, if it makes sense. And like I said, feel free to offer any auditory feedback. I began Heartworks, and my motivation was and is still to help people enjoy recognizing and developing their inner knowing, regardless of what they call it, because we all have it. And to see it known for everyone, it's a different experience. Sometimes we just want to be able to use our inner knowing to improve the quality of our relationships. Sometimes we want to develop our career. Sometimes we just want to have more inner peace. But I became committed that this is a path that is a life path for some people and a point of curiosity and self-exploration for others. So in my work, I offer several basic services. And the first is what I call intuitive counseling or coaching. I can't believe I left out the most recent alphabet soup in my journey as far as my degrees. A few years ago, I felt that I was doing the splits a little bit, even though I had worked in the fields of counseling for many years. I went back and pursued and finished a master's in counseling. So I felt that that allowed me to integrate my helping skills and my intuition in a way that, for some people, they need that. For others, they could care less. If it's positive, loving, and useful, they'll sign up. So thank you for letting me backtrack. So with intuitive counseling and coaching, I work with largely adults, sometimes adolescents and children, from all walks of life. And the thing that they have in common is they want to get to know their inner knowing, and they want to use it in their lives in positive, creative ways. And so when someone comes for intuitive counseling, they may have a challenge in their life. It could be as complex as grief. It could be as universal as a change in job or a change in relationship. It could be as unique as, well, Paula, I've had intuitive experiences myself, and I'm at a crossroads, and I want to learn how to recognize and develop it. So in intuitive counseling, I usually work an hour to hour and a half sessions with people, and I like to make a tape recording for them because I find that when we hear our own voice on tape, after we get through that initial self-consciousness, it's pretty hard to argue with ourselves, you know. One way or the other, we usually believe what we say, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so sometimes it can be real validating for most people to hear their own voice. And then also they don't have to worry about, oh, that felt really good what we talked about. What was it? You know, they can go back at their leisure and listen. And after we get to know one another, also in the intuitive counseling relationship, I find that it is kind of boring and also not always beneficial to sit and talk for an hour. And so what I encourage people to do with my assistance and support are creative activities to help them meet their goals and develop their intuition. So imagine all of you are tracking with me on that. So a lot of what I might do with someone, depending upon their gifts and talents and what they bring to our meeting, we might do something such as imagery or relaxation or prayer or meditation. Or I have one client at this point who's an artist, and she's very gifted artist, but she's feeling creatively at a transition point. So we use expressive arts activities that she really enjoys to help her connect with that creative spirit in herself. So we have a whole array of activities that we can incorporate into our work with that. And so some people get what they feel they came for by consulting with me in a very short period of time. Some people come periodically just to kind of check in. Other people will maybe work and play consistently for 3 or 4 sessions and move on to another area of interest for themselves, and that's really natural. So that's one aspect of what I do. And I also, I got bored a couple winters ago being snowed in, and I found out that in my profession of counseling out in California, they have a coaching certificate program specifically designed for counselors. So I said, sign me up. So I'm technically a certified life coach to the Grow Institute of California, because I find in my work a lot of people want the coaching. I think counseling has been given a bad rap over the years, some deservedly and some not. And so I think a lot of times people approach counseling with trepidation of, oh God, I'm going to sit in a room with a stranger for an hour and I'm going to talk about my problems, not, or at least not where I come from. So with the coaching, it's motivational, it's usually more structured, and it's all on the person signing up for the coaching contract as to monitoring their own progress with my support and really giving a structured process to goal achievement. But they do work well together, I find. So the next thing that a lot of clients come for is called clairvoyant work or clairvoyant reading. And clairvoyant is a big fancy French word from the Middle Ages that most people can't spell. And what it means is just clear seeing. And so you've often heard, fortunately I don't think we have too many of those 1-800 numbers anymore for dial a psychic, but the readings that I do are that work, so that someone, maybe they had a sister or a great aunt or someone who they trusted intuitively. And so when someone comes for a reading, that's often one session. And again, it's tape recorded. And I ask each person to focus on what is your intention for the reading. You know, when I was younger, I had so much fun that I really didn't care what level the other person participated on. I was kind of like a child in a toy store. And now that I'm older, I realize that allowing someone else to be passive and me being the cheap form of home entertainment really doesn't accomplish a whole lot. So when people come for reading, I ask them to prepare, I ask them their intentions, and we can have a structured format. But our intention with a reading globally is to help people look at patterns, past patterns, present patterns, and potential future patterns. And I say potential because we all have free will and choice, and we exercise it thousands of times a day, right? We all chose basically what time to get out of bed this morning and what to have for breakfast, and we know what we're wanting to do tonight. So free will and choice, even with our own intuition, it comes into play. So with a reading, that's what we do. And so some people might come because they have a health concern. So I do some medical intuitive work. I haven't trained with Carolyn Mace yet, but again, I'm not a medical practitioner. So with that having been said, I usually ask people to sign a disclaimer so that they know that I'm not giving medical counsel. I'm just helping them look at their systems. And then other people, as you might imagine, are looking at relationship. Sometimes I get young people who are, you know, in a quandary. They're 22 and they're not married yet, and they're just, you know, oh, when will this ever happen for me? And, you know, so those can be very enjoyable sometimes to talk about a person's gifts and talents and help them see the long view. So maybe that's enough said about readings. And as I said, I enjoyed it very much when I was younger because it was so exciting for me to see pictures and patterns, and it was often very funny too. I've told this story many times, but I don't hear any snores yet. About mid-1980s, I had a young man come to visit with me, and at the time my intuition worked primarily in pictures that I would see in my mind's eye, and then feelings, and then pictures. Now it works a little differently, just like every other experience in our life. As we grow and change, our systems change, right? But as we sat down together, he had these teeth chattering at his feet, like those old-fashioned cartoon characters, and they were just nipping at his heels and his hiney, and they were just giving him a hard time. And I couldn't really figure this out, you know. I didn't know what the metaphor was, and so I finally said, do you work in an office with teeth? And he said, yes. He said, I'm a dental technician. I said, well, those teeth at your feet are driving you crazy, so your job must be a real pain in the butt to you. And he kind of laughed and sighed, and he said, well, yeah, that's why I came to talk to you. So you see, in the coaching and the counseling relationship, it often helps us get through that getting to know you phase a little bit easier. But if someone comes for a reading, then we know that we're going to go right into that pattern. Does that make sense? I think probably enough said there, but when we stop this part of our talk, we can, if anybody has any questions about that. And the neat thing that I can say about the intuitive work now at that level is, I think, due to the work of Dr. Judith Orloff and due to the work of Shakti Gawain and due to the work of Carolyn Mace, that we are, as a society, breaking down our stereotypes. We are beginning to honor this inner knowing in everyone and to demystify it, and that gives me great cause for optimism. And then the last chapter of the work that I do is, usually it falls under the guise of energy work. And even in the profession of counseling, I am so excited to see this in the professional journals. They are using those terms, capital E, capital W, energy work. So if you see a listing for a counselor, a coach, and they indicate that they do energy work, you can pretty much be assured that they're going to teach you something about the human energy field, something about Reiki, something about therapeutic touch. And so I'm so pleased that traditional psychotherapeutic systems are slowly opening up to this. Now, maybe it's through social pressure, because we know that 40, and sometimes it's estimated as high as 60% of individuals in our country are paying out of pocket for services that may not be covered by their insurance because they want that. So the energy work that I offer people can come in the form of training or teaching. It can also be integrated into one-on-one or a group session. And I was really fortunate back in 1984, I got to meet Dr. Dolores Krieger, who developed therapeutic touch. And this was before we had a lot of certified programs. And so I took a 4-day intensive with her to learn therapeutic touch. And I found that it was very helpful for me in my own physical pain management. And it was also really helpful in just reducing stress. And so in my work with people, I teach therapeutic touch, and back in 1997, I also underwent a year of training with Dr. Millie Friel from, I think she's University of Iowa. She's either it's in Iowa City, Iowa State. Anyway, she was my Reiki instructor, so I don't like these words, but I'm a Reiki master teacher, which means that I can pass attunements and I can teach other people how to teach Reiki. And so in the energy work, let's say I have a client who has a chronic or life-threatening health problem. I'm kind of their adjunct professional, so I can help them with their emotional and spiritual challenges as they're working through that, and I can also incorporate the energy work and imagery with that as they choose. And there are individuals who come just for energy work or training, and they're not necessarily interested in the other work, which is great. It's fine. Because I know the energy work along with the intuitive work was something that came before the coaching and the counseling work, and so I'm happy that somehow I've stopped doing the splits and managed to put it together in a cohesive manner. I want to be quiet for a minute. One thing I did not mention is some insurance companies do pay for what I offer. Mostly the best payer, anyway, at this point seems to be Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm almost finished with 3,000 postmasters clinically supervised hours. So at that point, I'll move my licensure from what they call provisional to permanent licensure in the state of Nebraska. So I'll be eligible for more insurance coverage. And then again, some of what I do could not be coded or defined in that in any way, but most individuals do and couples do pay out of pocket for my service, and then others are eligible for insurance at this time. So I'll be quiet and.
What parts are covered under insurance? The counseling pieces of it, like where you've received degrees and stuff?
Ordinarily, it's counseling that would fit under the guise of adjustment disorders, things of that, stress reduction. I do a lot of grief work with people as well, and that's not covered for most insurance providers. Do not cover that at this time, which I think is a grave mistake, because sometimes it can even fall under the guise of prevention of further challenges. But so usually it has to be defined in some way that would fall under counseling. And again, when someone comes for counseling, if they want it, they're going to receive the best of what I have to offer, which is the intuitive piece. So there does come a point where we can't arbitrarily, hold up cue cards. And yeah, but that was a good question. Thanks. Any other questions?
Is that usually counseling with, is it like troubled children or teenagers?
It often involves children who haven't maybe benefited from traditional cognitive behavioral counseling approaches, and I often work with the parents. So, those children that get labeled, just too sensitive or, non-compliant, those are children that I can often help, or children with special learning needs, children in transition, maybe they're in a blended family. And what I focus on with the children is helping them manage their stress, helping to learn how to speak for their needs, helping them learn how to trust their inner knowing. Sometimes they've been in situations that haven't been safe for them, and so, helping assess that. So a lot of the work I do too involves their parents. So it's not unusual for a parent to come and, talk about a challenge that they may be having, and we'll say, well, why don't we have a meeting with, with the child, and let's see what's happening there for both of you. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
What type of classes did they have at the Metaphysical Institute that you went to?
They were a very structured program, and what they taught was a philosophy that it wasn't based on a religion. It was more a philosophy that was akin to spiritualism, that says that we live in one form before we're born, we live in a physical form while we're here, and when we pass away, we live in another form. So it was structured primarily around spiritualism, and it was designed to teach specific skills. I'll bet you can relate to some of these words: grounding or centering, opening up to one's intuitive knowing, and then focusing on specific intuitive skills such as telepathy and clairvoyance, things of that nature. And I was one of those disobedient, challenging students, and with that program, they had a very specific structure that they wanted you to follow, and I was always asking for more, and sometimes didn't fit real well into that curriculum. But what the gift was at the time was that one of my instructors was a special education teacher as well, so she brought that perspective, which I too had, into the experience. So that was the gift. I think the challenge for me was the dogma. And there are some good intuitive training programs available now, and I do teach classes with another colleague of mine, Maureen Graves, and we're looking into the probability next year of starting a program for CEUs for professionals, because I've taught some specialized classes like intuition in business for business people and intuition in relationships. But the best established program in the Midwest that I've seen is Sandra Choquette's program in Chicago. And you know that some of the titles of her books are escaping me, but if you browse New Realities, you're sure to find them. And then
What's your last name?
Choquette, but I don't know if I can spell it accurately. I can try. CHROUQUETT. I think enough that you would recognize it if you saw it in print. hmm She's got specifically a clairvoyant training program, and then I also like the work of Dr. Judith Orloff, who's a practicing psychiatrist in Los Angeles, and her first book, Second Sight, was about her own life journey to come to accept this part of herself, and then the second was more of a workbook format. So there are some very grounded, very qualified teachers, and then you'll find others that are not. But again, if you have a sense of what it is you'd like and how you want to blend it in with who you are and what you're doing, it's possible now. Yeah.
So with your intuition, do you do channeling and or reading and things like that?
Okay. Channeling, I have a different answer for. The traditional interpretation that I have of channeling is we think of someone's life force energy leaving their body and another entity coming through. I don't believe in that. For me, just speaking of for myself, I believe that whatever we give our whole heart and our whole being to, I think that's our creative channel. So I think we're all channelers in that sense. And I think that when we're doing our best work, we are connecting to that part of ourselves that's our highest self, that's unconditionally loving and wise. So I don't do channeling in the traditional sense. And I do in my work, boy, you guys are just letting me, boy, you're getting the whole enchilada. What I do in my work, particularly with people that are grieving, if they're at a place and they have a safe place inside to understand it, what I do is similar to the work of John Edwards. And I imagine that most of you have heard about him or seen him, and some of you might think, I understand this makes sense to me, and other people are thinking, I don't know, and I don't know that it's something I really want to participate in yet. But what I can do is I try to incorporate the traditional grief process, healing process, I should say, with helping people consciously develop a spiritual relationship with the loved one who's passed, so that they understand in a safe way that that person is not physically here with them, but the love lives on, and they can have a way of communicating. So I do that work, yes. And it's not something I'm very public about, in the sense that I think it's a very private thing. And I know that, once we get onto something we really like as a culture, sometimes we hype it to death. And I think that can be really destructive. But when I get a referral from another counselor for someone who's grieving, or someone who's in clinical pastoral education, or a minister, and they can tell me up front, I've lost a loved one, then we know. Then we know that there's a common language to communicate there. So if we could call that channeling, I guess I do that. But it's not anything you have conscious control over. That was a great question, by the way, but can you tell? I'm not easy to surprise, but you surprised me, so, yeah. But I try to do it in a context of healing, and where is the person in their own healing process and what's most meaningful to them. Because I think sometimes if they don't have a safe place to put it, and they don't know that they too are capable of, on their own terms, with their own love, having a relationship with a loved one who's passed, then they can become dependent on this other person, this other system to give them that information. And I don't see that as healthy, I guess, long term. Yeah. Any other for now? Shall we talk
In your
about?
brochure, you state that you do dream work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Dream work is another tool to help people get in touch with their unconscious mind, and to kind of define what I don't do. You know how we have those dream dictionaries, and you dream about an orange and it says it means this? I believe that every part of a dream relates to the person dreaming it. And so part of learning how to work with our dreams is to learn what our inner language is. And so when I help people work with their dreams, it could be, I just like to remember my dreams, so if it was a really good one, I can wake up with a smile on my face. It could be, I've been waking up consistently in the middle of the night with this. I had someone the other day that was having that experience of waking up in the middle of the night with this dream. And she knew right away that it was a message dream for her from her unconscious. And so we were able to say, what's your feeling about the message and what does it look like and mean to you? So basically with dream work, it's to help people, if they're interested in developing that pathway, again, as a way of self-discovery and inner knowing. And then, you know, too, with some of the dream research we're doing, we're finding out that there are dreams now that are called lucid dreams, where we can teach ourselves how to kind of control the action of our inner home movie while we're sleeping. And that they've shown that with lucid dreaming, we can process Gesundheit, or Taco Bell, right? You know, but we can become more actively involved in our unconscious process that way, and that's really, really fun. And then there are a couple of private dream groups in Omaha that are really enjoyable too. So it's just another pathway of getting to know yourself.
What are those dreams that when you have them and then they come true?
Oh, that's neat that you remembered that. Their name is called precognition, yeah, where we dream about something before it happens, precognition. And they're actually pretty common. As many as 25% of people experience that. Now, how that happens, we don't really know, except some people, like Deepak Chopra talks about how the mind is not local. You know, the mind is... That gets a little too cosmic for a Saturday afternoon at almost 5 o'clock, doesn't it? But so we don't know how they happen. We know that they do happen and that they can be very helpful to people. So any other thoughts at this point? Because we could spend a little bit of time about wonderful massage therapists I know and have known. Maybe in the larger context of you know, things that people in your profession and your emerging profession have found helpful. Is that a good place to go from here? Okay. So on a more universal level, sometimes groups of professionals, massage therapists, student massage therapists will get together on their own or through an organized system, and they'll say, we would like to learn more about, which reminds me, I didn't really address the other part of your comments about seeing auras and such. Yes, that's part of my experience. But a group of people could be a small group of 4 or 5 people, could be a large group of 10 to 12 people, will either come to my home, I'll go to their home, or it could be another public place to teach a private class. And I do most of my teaching now privately simply because the logistics are sometimes, you know, challenging for me. And so with massage therapists, the topics that they're often interested in, you could tell me, interested in therapeutic uses of imagery for themselves and their clients, how, you know, imagery and that body-mind connection helps people heal. Massage therapists these days are very interested in Reiki and also therapeutic touch. Massage therapists are also learning and interested in learning about how do I work with myself, and the things that massage therapists, as you know, often want to learn about. How do I ground myself? How do I set healthy boundaries so if I'm working with someone, I don't get, you know, off center, because it's natural when we're working that close to someone that we might pick up their thoughts or their feelings. And, you know, what do I do with that information? Also, I guess, on the most enjoyable level, sometimes a group of people will just get together for fun, and they'll invite me to come and share, and I like that. So it has been known that I get together with groups of people to read auras or to help them begin to sense auras and to work with that. And for many, many years, about 14 years, I taught a class through Metro called Your Personal Rainbow, which was about sensing and interpreting the human energy field. So just for fun, massage therapists often come as a group for those kinds of things. And I want to issue a disclaimer here. And those of you who have had the pleasure of meeting before, you probably heard this. The quality of the work that you will do as massage therapists has nothing to do with your ability or your interest in perceiving energy. So I just want to make certain that people don't confuse, oh, in order to be a skilled massage therapist, I have to understand and do energy work as well. I don't believe that to be true. I think if a person has a natural interest and a curiosity, fine. Explore that. If it doesn't feel like it's part of your interest or experience at this time, just say thank you for that information, and let life teach you, as you move forward. So not every tool is, appropriate for every person. So I know it's hard to sometimes trust that when we're students, but we're all students of life. So just thank you for letting me issue that disclaimer. And then oftentimes, massage therapists will choose to come for, a one-on-one session. And sometimes it can be something as playful as, well, I was at a party the other night and someone was working with a pendulum. What does that mean, or how does that work? Or I went to the next millennium and had a Kirlian photograph of my aura taken. I'd like your interpretation on this before I show you the picture. So those are some playful things that bring people to me who are massage therapists or kindred spirits. Sometimes after massage therapists graduate from school or while they're in school, they want to begin to use their intuition to look at, well, how does what I know about myself correspond to this business plan that I'm working on, and how can I begin to trust my knowing about what I want to create in my life? So that gets along the lines of intuitive coaching. I've worked with many massage therapists who over time do develop an interest in energy work, and they're not maybe a joiner of a group. They want to do some work one-on-one. And so that's where they might say, well, I'd really like to learn therapeutic touch, or I'd like to gather some information about Reiki. Or maybe they'd say, my level 1 instructor was so-and-so, and I'd like to try another level of Reiki with another instructor. So again, people in the healing arts or massage therapy might come more with an interest of getting to know themselves better and developing their skills and interests personally, or they might come for a specific interest as relates to building their practice. And I've met all sorts of wonderful people, and I think it's really nice to, when we can, to give ourselves more of a global perspective without overwhelming ourselves. I know when we're in school, it's like, how am I ever going to get this in my head, let alone decide how I want to integrate it into, another practice. And so sometimes when we're in school, it's not always the best, time to take on something new. And then other times it's like, well, I'm in that exploration, learning mode. So I guess that varies from person to person. Mm-hmm.
From your psychic abilities,
Mm-hmm.
Can you turn that on and off? So like when you walk, you naturally pick up on energies in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But sitting here, are you bombarded with images, having to put people around you?
When I was younger, that was really a challenge for me. Go to the grocery store, go to a party. And now that I'm older, I've learned, I view it kind of as a rheostat, so you kind of set the rheostat, and it's like, oh, I'm in this environment, maybe I'll set the rheostat at a 3, or, I'm working one-on-one with a client, maybe I'll set it up at a 10. So I can say that in the past it was really overwhelming for me. Also a lot of fun at the same time, if that makes any sense. But you go to the grocery store and you don't want to know that someone might have a health challenge or someone just had a fight with their spouse. Those are things you might want to know one-on-one with someone. But now that I'm older, I can, I don't think anything that's our natural self, I don't know that we shut it off. I think we can set that barometer a little bit better. And also, since over the last few years I've had changes in my eyesight, that has affected the way I process information. And so I'm more auditory, kinesthetic, emotional, whereas before I used to be more visual, if that makes any sense. And so I don't get the visual bombardment. I might get more of this, I'm hungry for burritos. Oh, I don't like burritos. I wonder, it's kind of funny sometimes, So you can teach yourself how to recognize your patterns and make adjustments accordingly. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever used your abilities to work with the police department or in solving any kind of crimes?
Oh, I do still have that on my brochure, don't I? Yeah, yes, that was one of those life-changing events. And I did probably the first 10 years of my practice, I did work with the police and the FBI to solve homicides, and then I found that it was far too emotionally draining. And so fortunately now that doesn't come up very often, and it does sometimes bother me if I don't listen to the news, but if I have the news on or something and I'll perceive something, it's like I really didn't want to, so I'll usually just send positive thoughts or pray about it or something. And now how I find that coming in handy is for families who've experienced trauma. So it's not unusual for me to get a call from another professional or, a family in need of help, if they've experienced a violent crime or whatever. So that's usually where I use my sensitivity now, and I can see that it's been a real blessing for me too, because I'm one of those people that I can over-internalize things. And so the good in that was that it helped me to really see at 27, 28, 29 that life was presenting me with a positive crossroads that we all have, right? Where I can choose either way. Something wonderful is in store for me, but I get to choose where I'm going to put my attention and my love. And so the good thing is it kind of jolted me out of complacency that said, oh, if you're wanting to use these abilities to help yourself and other people, maybe you need to get some more training, maybe you need to do some inner work to find out where you are. So that was the gift in that chapter. But I can gratefully say that the work that I do now with that is not that intense. It just seems to flow very naturally into the coaching and the intuitive counseling. Yeah. But it was very life-changing at the time. It's one of those life lessons that you don't sign up for, and it just kind of comes, and then you decide, okay, it's here. What do I do now? So, yeah.
You said you're studying for coaching from a school in California?
Mm-hmm.
So you were here at the time.
Yes.
How did that work?
There were two components. There was a home study course that you had a pre-test and then your home study work and then your post-test. And then you also made tape recordings of sessions and then sent them to your instructor, your supervisor. And so they critiqued that. So that's how that worked. And it just so happened that this program was available only to people who had masters in counseling. I think the coaching field, we're starting to catch up in the Midwest. I think the coaching field is going to become more and more specialized, and so that they'll develop coaching programs for business, for finance, for counselors, for specific disciplines. I think that's coming. And there's a publication that you might have seen, Spirituality and Health, and they talk a lot about spiritual coaching and specialized coaching. You might be able to find it at Borders or Barnes & Noble. I don't think New Realities has it any longer, but yeah. So they're using distance learning with computers. And then the program that's really making some headway here in Omaha is Marie Nemeth's program. And Marie Nemeth was a psychotherapist in private practice, and she took the best of cognitive behavioral and put it into a coaching format. And there are people here that do that program here. Patrick Davis and some other people do that coaching program here. So it's coming.
Actually, on that, I just went to that seminar, Being Coached. That's where I was 2 weekends ago. And it is a really great seminar, because I was going to ask you who was your supervisor in that with the coaching stuff, because I believe Marie does a really good job. So if anybody wants information on that, I can get a hold of it for you.
Good. See, in-class networking. Yeah. And it's a field, too, that kind of like energy work, where it's going to be emerging and changing, I think, a lot over the next decade. And so some people say, I've been doing this all my life. I don't need another piece of paper to hang on my wall, and that will be good for them. And other people will say, I do want to go through this process so I can feel that I've given myself the best of what it has to offer. So in the meantime, we need to be real lovingly discerning of what we feel is you know, our best needs. But coaching can fit in really well with a lot of different professions, because it helps us move towards excellence on our own terms. Anything else? Well, I know that was a lot of information, and it's not very often we go from auras to FBI to coaching. You know, I look at my life and think, but actually it's much better integrated than what it might sound. And what I managed to do was just follow my heart, so thus the name of my work. And it's amazing how our outer life experiences can help us, you know, this fits together really well with that, have those epiphanies, and we can also do that internally, you know, by paying attention to our love and our wisdom. It makes life really a grand adventure, doesn't it? Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about just how it actually works, the dynamics of intuition in terms of, is it just a sensitivity to reading specific signs and being able to understand? Is there a spiritual seeing or a third eye kind of seeing, or what happens? How does it work?
Well, my best answer for that is a